My husband divorced me by text. I read the message again, my hands trembling only slightly. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old babe. I've already emptied our joint account. Ha 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 ha. That ha 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 sat like a knife in my chest, not because of heartbreak, but because of how cold, childish, and heartless it was. I stared at the message, sitting alone at the breakfast table, the coffee still hot beside me, untouched. The man I had shared 27 years of my life with, raised two sons with, cared for through his surgeries, held during his failures, and defended in front of my own family, had reduced our history to a text message. My name is Linda Hawkins, 61 years old. Retired school principal. Calm, polite, structured. I've always been the reasonable one in every room. That morning, I stayed calm too. I didn't throw things. I didn't scream. I simply replied, "Good luck." That was it. He thought he'd won. He thought I'd cry and beg like the helpless housewife he believed I was. What he didn't know was I'd already seen this coming. Last month, I'd found a receipt in his golf bag. 2 plane tickets to Miami, booked under Mr. Daniel Hawkins and guest. The guest name wasn't there, but the perfume sample that had slipped between the folds of the paper gave me more than enough reason to dig deeper. He'd forgotten who I used to be. Before marriage, before motherhood, I was sharp, methodical, respected. I hadn't lost those skills, just tucked them away. So instead of confronting him then, I acted. Quietly, carefully. I met with Alexi, our family's longtime financial advisor, without telling Dan. I calmly requested a forensic check on our accounts. I had my name legally removed from certain assets and transferred others to a private trust, one that Dan had signed off on years ago without reading the details. It had a clause, one he'd regret never understanding. He laughed in that text. He thought he'd emptied our joint account and left me helpless. But the account he drained? It was a decoy. Set up 2 weeks ago. The real funds, retirement, investments, even the value of our beach house, were never in it. And more than that, he didn't know I'd already filed for divorce. Quietly, with evidence, with documentation, with lawyer fees paid in full from my private reserve. While he was taking selfies in some Florida bar, I was already rewriting the future. Not out of revenge, but dignity. And for the first time in 27 years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Freedom. "You thought you broke me, Dan," I whispered to myself, sipping my coffee. "You only set me free." Like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories where betrayal meets justice. Leave a comment if this touched your heart. Dan didn't reply after my "good luck." Not that day, not the next. I assumed he was busy celebrating his fake victory, probably drinking cocktails with his 20-something arm candy, showing off like a teenager who just broke free from high school rules. But what he didn't realize was that the moment he sent that text, he handed me the last piece I needed. I still remember the judge's look when my lawyer slid the printed screenshot across the table, the timestamp, the confession, the insult. "Your Honor," my lawyer said softly, "this message came just after Mr. Hawkins moved a significant sum into a private account, belonging solely to him. Just hours after this, he booked a luxury suite in Miami. This is a textbook case of asset concealment." And the judge? He didn't even blink. "Proceed with full financial review and restraining injunction, effective immediately." Boom. Just like that. Dan had no idea he was flying into a legal storm. When he landed in Miami 3 days later, he was served on the airport curb. I imagine he looked confused at first, then furious. But me? I was already done feeling small. I'd spent the last 2 decades running our household like clockwork, organizing every bill, every appointment, every insurance policy. He thought I was just good with chores. He never realized I knew the business of our life inside out. While he was out flirting in hotel lounges, I was at my lawyer's office finalizing the asset freeze. The trust I'd created had already rerouted 70% of our wealth. The house was now under my maiden name. And the funny thing? He signed the paperwork last year, trusting me blindly during a refinance. He never even read the fine print. My sons, both in their 30s, were initially shocked. But when I showed them the text, The bank records, the flight bookings, they didn't even flinch. "Mom," my eldest said, "I'm so proud of you. You handled this better than most people half your age." And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not just as a mother or wife, but as Linda. He thought I'd collapse, that I'd fall apart, beg for scraps, drown in pity. But here's what Dan didn't know. I had spent too many years being silent, cleaning his messes and dimming. Odd component placement, cleaning his messes and dimming my own light. Now, I wasn't just getting even, I was getting back everything I deserved. And he was about to realize just how dangerous it is to underestimate a woman who remembers everything. The first time Dan tried calling me, I let it ring out. The second time, he left a voicemail. His voice wasn't angry, it was nervous. "Linda, hey, just got some confusing legal stuff. Maybe we should talk? I think the lawyers messed something up." Messed up? No, Dan, they got everything exactly right. By the end of that week, his Miami fantasy was unraveling. The 20-year-old babe, who he claimed loved him for his young spirit, was now staring at a frozen credit card and a man 28 years older than her who couldn't even pay for dinner. She left him at a gas station, according to the hotel clerk I'd called for fun. And Dan? He came crawling back to our city, unshaven, humiliated, and confused how a woman he thought was soft had completely outplayed him. He showed up at our old house one morning. I was sipping coffee on the front porch, calm, collected. His voice cracked. "Linda, come on, you're really doing all this?" I took a long sip before answering. "You already did it, Dan. I'm just finishing the paperwork." He stood there, eyes darting around, expecting maybe a sign of mercy. "You're not like this. This isn't you." "You never knew me," I said quietly. "You only knew who I had to be to survive around you." I had spent years saving for our retirement, me clipping coupons, cutting back on little pleasures, while he splurged on gadgets and secret expenses I now saw clearly in our accounts. The difference? I saved with discipline and heart. He stole with greed and ego. My lawyer uncovered hidden investments under Dan's name, things he'd bought secretly, hoping I'd never find out. But the beauty of digital footprints is, they don't lie. Every shady transfer, every offshore whisper, it all came back to haunt him. I transferred a portion of our assets into a women's shelter trust, anonymous but powerful, because I wasn't just leaving Dan behind. I was breaking a cycle. That night, I found myself standing in front of my bedroom mirror. I saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not a wife, not a victim, not a discarded woman in her 60s. I saw Linda Hawkins, strong, graceful, and finally free. And for the first time in decades, I smiled. Not out of politeness, but out of power. 2 weeks later, Dan filed a formal complaint, claiming I had tricked him out of his fair share. His lawyer called mine, trying to intimidate us. This wasn't a clean divorce. She moved money without consent. My attorney just chuckled. Your client abandoned her via text, stole from their joint account, and announced it like a frat boy prank. You really want this to go public? Dan dropped the complaint within 48 hours. But something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, not from Dan, but his mother. She and I hadn't spoken in years. She had always protected her son's behavior, excused it as boys will be boys. But this letter was different. "Linda, I heard what happened. I'm ashamed. I raised him better than this. You didn't deserve any of it. If you'll let me, I'd like to visit, just to say sorry, woman to woman. Marianne." At first, I wasn't sure, but then I thought, maybe this was part of healing too. She came by with trembling hands and tearful eyes. We talked for over 2 hours. Not about Dan, really, but about life, regret, and how sometimes the people we love turn into strangers. Before she left, she held my hands and said, "You were the best thing that ever happened to him," and he threw it away. "I hope you never let anyone dim your light again." After she left, I sat alone with those words echoing in my mind. Dim your light. That's what he'd done over and over until I'd forgotten I even had one. And just as I was beginning to feel peace again, another message came through. But not from Dan. It was from a woman I didn't know. Her name was Rachel. Hi, Linda. I don't mean to intrude, but I think you deserve to know. I was with Dan 2 years ago. I had no idea he was married. He lied to me about everything. When I found out, I left him immediately. I just wanted to say what you did. It was incredible, inspiring. I stared at her message for a long time. Dan hadn't just betrayed me once. He'd made it a habit, a lifestyle, and women like Rachel, young, trusting, were just stepping stones to him. But now, the game was over, and I wasn't done yet. A few weeks passed. My life started to take shape again. Quiet mornings with coffee, reading by the window, real laughter with old friends I'd almost lost during my marriage. Then, one morning, I got another email from Dan. Subject line, "Can we talk?" I didn't open it. I didn't need to. But curiosity got the better of me. I skimmed it days later. The tone was different. No more arrogance, no more ha-has. Just empty. "I miss how peaceful things were with you. Miami wasn't what I thought it would be. She left. Said I was too angry all the time. I think I made a mistake." I smiled. Not with bitterness, not with revenge, just relief. He didn't know about the private trust account my lawyer helped me set up the week before the divorce finalized. He didn't know I'd taken the funds he tried to drain, turned them into investments, and already doubled the money. He didn't know I'd started volunteering at a women's shelter, helping others who'd been abandoned, blindsided, or broken down. He didn't know I was finally free, and he would never know peace like this. The last message I ever sent him was just 5 words. "I hope you find healing. No rage, no guilt, just finality." As I stood by the ocean later that week, alone, barefoot, the water gently brushing my ankles, I whispered into the waves, "Goodbye, Dan." Not because I missed him, but because I had finally let go of the life that once kept me small. And in that moment, I wasn't the woman he left. I was the woman who survived him, who rebuilt, who thrived, who learned that sometimes a text message goodbye is the beginning of everything better. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more real, emotional stories to life.